welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, we had earlier discussion also on COVID cures. We've had actually lots of discussions on what to do, how to handle the disease, what are the symptoms. And as the cases are rising, we're again having that conversation as to how to tackle the cases as we've learned something more about the disease. What are the cures that are actually working, what is not working, and is there a vaccine in sight? And also, what are the good, the work that some people are doing? We are going to be talking to doctors, but also humanitarian attempts by those who had the disease, who suffered it, and who set up helplines. So that's going to be my panel for today. Joining me is Dr. Romel Tikku. He is the Director Internal Medicine at the Max Super Speciality Hospital. Dr. Atul Kakkad, he is the Vice Chairman, Department of Internal Medicine, Sir Gangaram Hospital. Dr. Manish Baijal, he's the Director, Institute of Laparoscopy, Endoscopy and Bariatric Surgery at the Max Super Speciality Hospital. And Aditya Mal, he is the founder of Dhoon.com. That is one of the websites that actually connects plasma donors from recovered patients with those who need the plasma donations. So he's actually had a traumatic case. In fact, Aditya, can you begin by telling us why you set up this website and what exactly happened with you?
Sure, Priya. A few weeks ago, my father-in-law was infected. We don't know how he got infected, but he did. He's 69 years old. He was in home isolation for a week, but in the beginning of the second week, he had to get admitted. And he got admitted at Max. And then in a couple of days, we had to move him into the ICU. And then the doctor said that, plasma therapy is going to be required. It took us about 4 days to actually find plasma therapy, and I don't want to think back to those 4 days because it was fairly nightmarish for the family. And we were running from pillar to post. We found somebody, and then only to discover that she's ineligible. So we wasted a day or two in that. And fortunately, it all worked out, but it took 4 days. He's back, hale and hearty now. But when he got back, then we realized that if we were going through that, then there's bound to be hundreds more families that are going through that. And, it's a question of connecting to people. And in this age of the internet, that's a problem that could be solved. And that's the intention with which we started this website.
Okay, then, I'll come to the next step of the chain because as is what happened was I had, Richa Kapoor, the producer of this show, she reached out to me, a friend of hers, a relative of hers, needed the plasma, and I reached out to Dr. Tikku, who actually put me in touch with you. But Dr. Tikku, what happened after that was we actually managed to get 4 donors. But the next step puzzled everybody was they were there, they were ready to donate, they filled the criteria also, I think 14 days after you've been recovered from COVID or 28 days. But they didn't have the antibodies. Nobody could find the antibodies in them. So explain that as to, why something like that would happen.
Well, there's a specific titer that you need for it to be effective. And earlier, as far as I know, there was no way to check the titers. I think initially that the plasma was given to these patients was given without checking the titers because at that point of time, I don't think we had the kit. But now we'll have to check further with the labs who are doing it in the hospitals, whether they're doing a titer or not. Because you need a specific titer, then only it will be effective, the plasma, those antibodies.
Titer means I had to Google it after you SMS me.
It's basically the level of antibodies, a specific level, yeah. But recently there have been reports that over a period of time, 2-3 months, they actually dropped the antibody levels. But in these patients, since they have recently recovered, the titer will actually be good enough. So initially, that's why we saw, in spite of the fact that the titers were not there with us, we didn't know the specific antibody levels, it did work. And with my experience, what I've seen, it's all anecdotal till now, limited experience, that it does work. And most of the patients who have received plasma are recovering. But having said that, we don't have enough evidence as with other drugs. So we need more and more data, lots of trials going on. Even in India, the government is doing trials, lots of trials with private hospitals also. So once we have the data in the coming 2-3 months, we would know that how effective it is. But as far as I'm concerned, I think it does really work. But again, we need data. And the point is basically, how do you have access to information regarding plasma? Like you were struggling, our patients every day call me. I keep sending them these websites and tell them to find out. Even today, I got so many calls. Now, again, I'm saying this is a challenge. Getting a bed, knowing about which hospital has a bed. There has to be a lot of transparency regarding that. Somebody has to guide these patients. By just giving a helpline number which nobody answers is not the solution. Somebody has to sort it out for them. Even if you're admitted in a hospital, you're in an ICU and the doctors say that you need plasma, then where do they go? Plasma is not something which you get over the counter in a shop. So somebody has to guide them. There has to be a way of figuring out who are the patients who have recovered, like this website that we're talking about. At least you have some access. I think all of us should put in our efforts towards this, make people more aware of what exactly is plasma, how do you get it, and so on and so forth, because this is really a challenge. Even now we are struggling. So once you have access to this information, it makes a lot easier for you to figure out how to manage it. And actually, as I said, it does help a lot of patients because we don't have any other medicine right now. Even the newer drugs, we're not very sure about them. So patients who are critical, who are in the ICU, who are in cytokine storm, on the verge of ventilation, convalescent plasma, remdesivir, tocilizumab, these drugs are life-saving for them. And once we have the data, it will just be confirmed.
Okay, we're going to go into the drugs. I'm going to ask you a bit more about the cures that you mentioned. But Dr. Atul, just sticking with the plasma story, we've also, there's a Chinese study that says that within 2 or 3 months, the antibodies do tend to disappear. Now, that is worrying to a layperson like me. That the whole building immunity then goes out of the window, doesn't it, if this is supposed to happen?
Yeah. So it's very important to understand first, what Dr. Tikku has mentioned. When you're choosing a patient, you should choose a patient who was moderate. If you take a mild patient, the antibody levels will be very low. In fact, what he's also mentioned that the titer should be very specific. Yeah, that's very true. The titer should be very specific in case the titer is low, as maybe in your patient. But majority of the patients who have moderate to severe infection, they have a very good titer of the antibodies, although, there is no standardization right now also to pick up these antibodies at the level which has been, suggested by even the ICMR. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. So the antibodies are of two types. The initial antibody is of a particular type, which is called IgM. It disappears by about 10 to 12 days. And then appears the other antibodies, which is more important, which is important for a passive immunity, what we are looking at. So if the titer of that is low, because of the infection was low or the infection was mild, that is the most likely explanation for your patient why he was unfit as a donor.
So this, the belief that we should build herd immunity, you think still holds, given what you just said?
Yeah. So actually, what is herd immunity is that close to about 60 to 70% of our community should have either a clinical or subclinical infection, so that there is no further transmission, or the transmission rate is bare minimum. So that is what is herd immunity. So there is a way of building it. So either you have a proper infection, or you have an infection which is not clinically picked up. You just have something which is very mild. Maybe you have some cold or some diarrhea, and that's the way the infection, to build up the immunity. So that is all what we were talking about is an active immunity. But a plasma therapy is an example of a passive immunity where ready-made antibodies are transferred from that patient to the patient who requires it.
Okay. Manish, we were talking about, you're also dealing with a whole lot of non-COVID patients who don't have COVID. How are you treating them? What is their reaction so far? How are they, because a lot of symptoms also, like Dr. Thakkar has mentioned, whether it's fever, diarrhea, you can confuse them with dengue, with other diseases also.
You see, Priya, this is the unfortunate part these days. That we are only talking about COVID. You see, there are n number of patients suffering from so many other diseases, and when they actually come to the hospital, they actually have complaints. What happens to us? How are we going to be treated? So, if you look, I'm a surgeon. I'm no expert at medical treatments. We already have experts here. But almost 80% of the surgical procedures which happens in a hospital today are planned surgeries. And planned surgeries doesn't mean that these surgeries can be postponed for a long, long time, because these are medically necessary surgeries which would be required in times to come. And if we don't do them, there are, of course, complications of these surgeries which are bound to happen in that certain percentage of patients. So on this platform, what I would like to tell patients is, these 3 months lockdown period, all this, what has happened, there is a lot of knowledge which we have attained regarding managing non-COVID patients as well in a COVID atmosphere. So in hospitals, if you see, we have negative pressure theaters now. We have air exchanges which are happening so that the same air is not transmitted from one patient to another, as well as the healthcare workers who are around. Whenever you do a surgery in an operation theater, you have the smoke which gets evacuated whenever you use cautery. So now we have devices in which the smoke actually does not come to the atmosphere. So what I'm trying to say here is that the patients who've been postponing their procedures for a while, now probably is the time they should be able to go to the right places which are well equipped to handle patients safely, doing non-COVID procedures, surgeries in patients who are non-COVID, as well as they can safely go to a hospital, these safe hospitals which are able to handle these patients and be sure of not getting the disease from other patients. So I think now is the time. All that period that we had talked about, that postpone elective surgeries, you cannot do that any longer, because we are only going to increase the suffering in these set of patients.
And also, get back to life, really. The lockdown has
Absolutely, life has to go on. So we
even
cannot
in medical
just sit
terms.
back. Yeah,
yes. Aditya, before I get the others in on the other cures that are there, tell me about your website in terms of, do you have enough plasma donors? Are you running out of donors? What is the demand like?
So I'll just put out some numbers, and that will kind of paint the picture. We've got, as of now, over 700 patients who are looking to receive plasma. We have 180 donors. And because of the criteria which I just mentioned, I think there are about 55, 56 eligible donors. That could be because, they don't fit the criteria of time or the other criteria. And, they may become...
Time is either 14 days or 28 days after you recovered.
Or, in some cases, there are patients who've just recovered and have signed on as donors as well. So if you look at that gap, it's a little scary, actually. We've been able to, help, I'd say, about 15 to 20 people. But compared to the size of people who are looking for plasma, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Which brings me to you, Dr. Tikku. I've heard you talk about the other, you touched on remdesivir. There's also, in fact, I checked the name. I'm always very bad at this. Favipiravir.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about these drugs, sir?
See, basically, we don't have any drug at the moment which is approved for treatment of COVID-19. So favipiravir and remdesivir are both broad-spectrum antiviral drugs. These are basically repurposed drugs which have been used in the past to treat other ailments. This favipiravir drug has been approved for restricted emergency use by DGCI, because the interim reports of the trial which is going on, the phase 3 trials, have shown that it is promising. So now this is a repurposed drug which has been used in Japan to treat influenza. It was earlier used to treat Ebola virus patients and even for post-exposure prophylaxis. And with COVID also, it's been used in China, Japan, Russia, UAE. And the studies which have been done are small studies from these places, especially China, where they saw that patients who took the drug, 4th day, they were negative for the virus. And even there was significant improvement, more than 90% had improvement in the chest x-rays. So, but all this is all anecdotal based on small studies. See, we need large-scale randomized controlled trials, and there are about 30 such trials going on all over India, US, UK, China, Japan. And once these trials have concluded and they're published in peer-reviewed journals, then we can be sure about the safety and efficacy of these drugs. Till then, we can't swear by them. But yes, something is better than nothing. At least we have something in our armory, because we don't have anything else. And when
you said something is better than nothing, what is your view on Ramdev's drug?
Well, I'm not an expert on Ayurveda, but definitely it might improve your immunity, but you can't really say that this is the cure. But I would leave it at that. But otherwise, you need evidence for everything. Even with the, I was reading about the Ramdevji's drug, where the study was done. I think the sample size was small and there were not very sick patients enrolled in the study. I'm not too sure about the authenticity of that. But this is the crux, basically. All these studies, they have to have a large sample size. Then what were the kind of people, patients who were enrolled? Were they sick? Was a CT done? Were the blood markers done? Did they have any comorbidities? What was the age? I mean, trials are not easy and it's a complex process, and that's why they take time. And once you have the
Time is
results,
what we don't have.
yeah, but trials will take their own sweet time. You can't do it overnight. See, everyone is trying to be one up and show that, come to the limelight, that we brought this, we took this out, but probably don't have enough data. Even with favipiravir and remdesivir, everyone thinks it's being projected as the drug. Right now, we don't know that. Yes, it does. See, favipiravir has its limitations. It's not meant for severe patients. It's not meant for critical disease patients. It's for mild to moderate. Even mild cases who are healthy young don't even need any supportive treatment. They just need supportive treatment. So mild to moderate, because that's how it works. It prevents the replication of the virus. So once that replication has happened, then it is of no use. But in patients, on the second and third day, if you use it early enough when the virus hasn't replicated, then it can be a potential game changer, because then you're preventing these patients from getting into a critical phase where they need hospitalization. And if you reduce hospitalization, you're reducing the burden on the healthcare system. So why not? If the studies show us in the next 2-3 months that these are effective drugs, definitely we'll have something with us. Same goes with remdesivir. Now, remdesivir is a different drug. Favipiravir is an oral tablet, easy to administer, relatively inexpensive, good safety profile. You can take it at home. So that way, it's a very easy drug. Compare that with remdesivir. You have the profile of the patients is different. So you use it in patients who are sick, in severe cases, who are in the ICU, needing some sort of oxygen support or ventilatory support. It is an intravenous drug. It is an expensive drug, though the safety profile is good apart from some mild liver dysfunction. So the subset of patients is different. You really have to choose your patients when it comes to both. And the timing is very important. The most appropriate time to give it. Remdesivir has to be given when the patient is on the verge of getting into the ICU or impending ventilation. That's when you give tocilizumab, you give remdesivir, and you give convalescent plasma. So everything together really gets them back, gets them out of the ICU. And favipiravir is for mild to moderate. If it's proven that it is a drug which really works, then why not? If you have the report with you within the first 2-3 days and you give it, maybe you won't reach a stage where things will worsen, especially for patients who have comorbidities. Elderly, diagnosed in the first 2-3 days, having diabetes, other heart issues, rheumatoid arthritis, immunosuppressed patients, if you give it and it prevents the replication and makes them negative on 4th, 5th day, why not? So we have to be open to everything. We can't just dismiss off these drugs. But having said that, at the same time, you need enough evidence on this. There are lots of trials going on, whether it's remdesivir, favipiravir, whether it's plasma, hydroxychloroquine, tocilizumab. There are so many things. Everything is going on. So next 2-3 months, we'll be more sure about it. But right now, let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that something comes out in the next 2 months till the vaccine is in place. Vaccine is going to take time, so I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so vaccine I'm going to a little later. I want to bring in Dr. Atul, your take on these two drugs, and also you're also on ground really handling patients. So some anecdotal thing that you think actually works or helps or is good in terms of cure.
So firstly, I'd like to say, once a patient is there, we try to divide into mild, moderate, and severe. Patients who are moderate, they only come to the hospital. So we see moderate to severe patients. Severe patient goes to ICU, but moderate patients, they are in the COVID ward. So the drugs have been mentioned by Dr. Romil, and recently there was an Indian company, Glenmark. They had that oral medicine, but the amount of pill burden is tremendous. You're supposed to take 9 tablets morning and 9, a huge burden. The other thing is about these is what we normally follow in the hospital is a cocktail regime. We try 2 to 3 drugs. We don't know which works, but that's what is being followed now. And we, under the cover of steroids, we at least give 2 drugs or more. So that has been followed. And the drugs which are available now, the hetero companies also come with the injectable drug, which is antiviral. It's supposed to be a little better than as compared to the oral drug, which Dr. Tikku has mentioned. So that is the thing. And very recently, there was a like a systemic review. In fact, it said that plasma therapy is perhaps the only thing which may benefit as compared to the other drugs, because the other drugs are basically non-specific. They are more antiviral as compared to anti-COVID. So that is the thing. So, but there are now, a large, huge number of data which is available by the systemic review. The plasma therapy is the thing which should be not forgotten. In fact, it was used earlier also for certain diseases, but it should be the thing which should be tried for patients who have moderate and who are requiring maybe the need of ventilator, or the respiratory rate is high, or high grade fever, or they have typically warning signs, which we call it, the patients in the ward.
Okay, and Dr. Atul, in terms of vaccinations, what have you heard? You heard like a whole lot of vaccinations are entering the phase 3 of the trials in July itself, which is pretty quick and pretty fast.
So, the vaccine is not very soon. We don't see the vaccine to be there by at least this year end, at least for that period. There are many hurdles because, we have to do various trials, the phase 1, phase 2, I believe phase 1 has already been done. Phase 2 and 3 needs to be done before it comes to the market. So typically, if you take a drug or vaccine, it takes at least 7 to 8 years. In case we need to enhance it, it may be taking at least 2 years. So I don't think that it should be able to be, beginning of next year, the vaccine. And if it's not available, it means that, we are going to build up the immunity by the way of infection. That also is a way, to treat the infection.
It's the antibodies. Dr. Tikku, you were talking about vaccines also. What have you heard?
Yeah, there are more than 100 vaccine candidates in different phases of human trials all over the world. But the most promising ones seem to be 5 or 6, which are from US and China, and one which was in Oxford. But then later on, we heard that the Oxford trial didn't really work in the monkeys, which it was given. They all developed the infection. So there is one Moderna vaccine from US, and then there's one Sinovac company from China. I think they are in the phase 3 trials, and hopefully, yeah. But again, see, manufacturing is going to be a challenge. Even if you have a vaccine against COVID, how many vials will you manufacture, and how many people will get it all over the world? If you have to manufacture 7 billion doses, for that to happen and for everyone to receive the dose, it will take at least 2 to 3 years. So that is going to be a challenge. How many people will it reach, and how many can you manufacture? Assuming that there is a vaccine in place, which again has lots of ifs and buts, because this is a newer disease. Maybe you won't have a vaccine. There are many diseases against which you don't have a vaccine.
So until then, best bet is what? Immunity building. HIV doesn't have a...
No, there's no vaccine against HIV, hepatitis C. There was no vaccine against Ebola, SARS, MERS. All these diseases never had any vaccine. You have to build your immunity. That's fine. That we anyway keep doing. But apart from that, you have to do what you're being told to do, which is basically maintaining social distancing, hand washing, and wearing a mask. And I am still telling you, last time also I told you, nobody's doing that. And people are getting infected because of this simple reason. We are not following the protocol, the guidelines. The government is doing what it has to do. It is adding beds, it's increasing the testing, it's doing whatever it takes. But we as citizens are not contributing. We're not doing our bit. Randomly, if you go and check hospitals, on the road, pharmacy, grocery, people are not following any norms. They don't wear a mask. They don't wash hands. There is no concept, in spite of the fact that day in and day out, there are channels doing shows on it. Everywhere it's spoken about. Your ringtone talks about it. But people don't seem to understand. So this is a big challenge, I think, in India.
Manish, final word to you. What advice will you give? Because we are heading for the worst times, really. But you're saying this is also the time for you to come out and be safe. So, for instance, in your office, when you're meeting patients, are you, how are you preparing themselves? How are you preparing?
I think we have to be positive. We don't have to be so negative, especially when we look at how things have gone on in Europe. They saw actually very bad times. They're seeing good times now. Things are opening up, and I'm sure we would also see the same in times to come. Now, these patients, when they come to the hospital, there is no doubt as of now we have to take our precautions. Patients have to wear masks. Patients have to use their sanitizers, and we have to do the same. If the patient is doing the same, we are doing the same, the chances of getting an infection is very, very little. We now are lucky that we have enough testing is available. So there is a small window period. So whenever we are doing these surgeries, we are testing them immediately before getting admitted. And we prefer to do the surgery within 72 hours of the test, so that we are sure that the patients are safe, they are not getting exposed to the disease, or they are not exposing others to the disease that they have. So I think we have to be positive. We have to take our precautions. We have to go ahead with life, whether it's medical treatment, work, economy, everything needs to continue. So the life has to go on, and we really don't have to be so negative. We are going to go through this very soon.
That's a positive note to end on. Thank you, all of you, for joining me in this discussion. I think we've come away with a whole lot of takeaways. A lot of questions that have been asked on various WhatsApp groups are now being answered by a panel of experts. So thank you so much, all of you, for this. And thank you for watching this show.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.